The dust-caked stagecoach lurched to a halt outside the Nogales depot on a scorching Arizona afternoon in 1885, and Nora Zimmerman clutched her well-worn carpetbag with trembling fingers. Everything she owned in the world was packed inside that bag, along with a letter that had changed the course of her life, forever a marriage proposal from a stranger she'd never met. A cattle rancher named Alexander Embry. Nora stepped down from the coach, her boots meeting the hard, packed earth with a soft thud. The journey from Boston had been grueling, but nothing compared to the fear now coursing through her veins. She wasn't the woman Alexander Embry was expecting. In fact, she wasn't the woman he had exchanged letters with at all. Miss Katherine Winters. The station master called, consulting a piece of paper in his weathered hands. Nora swallowed hard. That was the moment when her carefully constructed plan threatened to collapse. I'm here for Mr. Embry, she managed, avoiding a direct lie while her conscience prickled uncomfortably. Well, that'd be him over there. The station master pointed toward a tall figure leaning against a post, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. Nora felt her heart hammer against her ribcage as she approached the man. He straightened when he saw her coming, revealing broad shoulders beneath a dust-covered denim jacket. His face was sun-bronzed and clean-shaven, with eyes the color of a summer sky. "Mr. Embry?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Miss Winters," he countered, studying her with an intensity that made her cheeks flush. The moment of truth had arrived. "I'm not the woman you ordered," she said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. To her surprise, the corner of his mouth quirked upward in what might have been a smile. "I'm not the man you expected either," he replied, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. Nora's brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't understand." "Alexander Embry's my cousin," he explained. "I'm Adam Embry. Alex broke his leg 3 days ago. He asked me to come fetch his bride-to-be and bring her to the ranch." Relief washed over her, quickly followed by a fresh wave of panic. "I see. But there's something you should know. You're not Katherine Winters," Adam interrupted, his eyes narrowing slightly. Nora felt the blood drain from her face. "How did you?" "Katherine Winters wrote to my cousin for 8 months. She described herself as a redhead with green eyes. Unless the Arizona sun is playing tricks on me, your hair's dark as midnight and your eyes are brown." Nora's shoulders slumped in defeat. "My name is Nora Zimmerman. Katherine was my friend. She died of influenza 6 weeks ago." Adam's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Zimmerman, but that doesn't explain why you're here instead of her. Katherine had no family. I was with her when she died." Nora's voice caught on the memory. "She made me promise to write to Mr. Embry to tell him what happened, but then I read his letters to her. And they were kind, full of hope for a future together. I couldn't bear to break his heart with a letter." The explanation sounded feeble to her own ears. "I thought it would be better to tell him in person, to give him back his ring." Adam's gaze fell to the small bulge in her pocket where Katherine's engagement ring rested. "That's mighty considerate of you to travel all this way just to break a man's heart in person." Nora winced. "When you put it that way, it sounds foolish." "It is foolish," Adam agreed, but without malice. "And now you're stuck in Nogales with nowhere to go." "I'll manage," Nora said, lifting her chin. "I can find work. I'm good with numbers and I can sew." Adam studied her for a long moment. "Alex isn't expecting you or Katherine for another 3 days. The stage was early for once." "What does that mean?" "It means you've got time to think about what you're going to tell him," Adam said. "And I've got time to figure out if you're really who you say you are. You don't trust me." It wasn't a question. "Trust is earned out here, Miss Zimmerman. The West isn't like your Boston." "How did you know I'm from Boston?" "Your accent. And those shoes aren't made for Arizona." He nodded toward her sturdy but clearly Eastern-made boots. Nora glanced down at her footwear, then back at Adam's face. For the first time, she noticed a small scar cutting through his left eyebrow and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he spoke, suggesting he smiled more often than he frowned. "I have a room at the hotel," Adam continued. "You can take it. I'll bunk with a friend." "That's not necessary. It is if you want to reach the ranch alive," he interrupted. "There's 40 miles of desert and mountain between here and there. You'll need supplies, proper clothes, and someone who knows the way." Nora hesitated. Everything inside her screamed that she should refuse, that she should maintain her independence. But she was practical enough to recognize the truth in his words. "I can pay for my own room," she insisted. "With what? Boston money doesn't stretch far in Arizona territory." She clutched her carpetbag tighter. "I have enough." Something in her expression must have conveyed her determination because Adam shrugged. "Suit yourself, but my offer stands if you change your mind." He gestured toward the small hotel across the dusty street. "I'll meet you there at sundown. We can discuss what to do about Alex then." Without waiting for her response, Adam tipped his hat and strode away, his long legs carrying him swiftly toward the livery stable at the end of the street. Nora watched him go, a mixture of relief and uncertainty washing over her. This wasn't how she'd imagined her arrival in Nogales, but at least she'd been honest about who she was mostly. She hadn't told Adam why she'd really come to Arizona, why she couldn't stay in Boston after Katherine's death. Some truths were better left buried, at least for now. The Nogales Hotel was a 2-story wooden structure that had seen better days, but it was clean inside, and the proprietress, a stout woman named Mrs. Hendricks, seemed genuinely pleased to have a lady guest. "Most folks passing through are men working the mines or the ranches," she explained as she showed Nora to a small room on the second floor. "It'll be nice to have some female company, even if it's just for a night." The room was sparse but tidy, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small window overlooking the main street. Nora set her carpetbag on the bed and thanked Mrs. Hendricks. "Supper's at 6, the older woman said. "Nothing fancy, mind you, but it'll fill your belly." "Thank you. That's very kind." Mrs. Hendricks hesitated at the door. "If you don't mind my asking, what brings a young lady like yourself to Nogales? We don't get many single women traveling alone." Nora had prepared for this question. "I'm meeting my fiancé's family," she said, the half-truth rolling easily from her lips. "He's a rancher north of here." "Ah, a mail-order bride," Mrs. Hendricks exclaimed. "Though you're prettier than most we get through here. What's your intended's name? I know most folks in these parts." "Alexander Embry," Nora replied, watching the woman's face carefully. "Mrs." Hendricks's eyebrows shot up. "Alex Embry, the Circle E Ranch." When Nora nodded, the woman's expression turned thoughtful. "Well, well, that's interesting." "Do you know him?" "Know of him," Mrs. Hendricks corrected. "Circle E is one of the bigger spreads in the territory. Started by his father right after the war. Good cattle land, though they've had their share of troubles lately." "What kind of troubles?" Nora asked, her curiosity piqued, but Mrs. Hendricks shook her head. "Not my place to gossip. I'm sure Alex will tell you everything you need to know." She stepped toward the door. "You rest up now. You look exhausted from your journey." After Mrs. Hendricks left, Nora unpacked her few belongings and washed the travel dust from her face and hands. She changed into her second-best dress, a practical navy blue with minimal trimming, and tried to make herself presentable for supper. As promised, the meal was simple but filling. Beef stew, fresh bread, and stewed apples for dessert. Nora ate at a small table in the corner of the dining room, aware of the curious glances from the few other guests, all men, as Mrs. Hendricks had implied. Just as she was finishing her meal, Adam Embry entered the dining room. He changed his clothes and cleaned up, Nora noticed. His light brown hair was still damp from washing, and he wore a clean white shirt with his denim pants. Without the layer of trail dust, he was even more handsome than she'd initially realized, with strong, regular features and those startling blue eyes. He spotted her immediately and crossed the room with long, easy strides. "Miss Zimmerman," he said, removing his hat. "May I join you?" Nora gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Please." Adam sat down, placing his hat on an unused third chair. "I trust you're settled in comfortably." "Yes, thank you. Mrs. Hendricks has been very kind." A serving girl brought Adam a plate of stew and a cup of coffee. He thanked her with a smile that made the young woman blush before hurrying away. "You've charmed the locals already, I see," Nora observed dryly. Adam's mouth quirked. "Jenny's sweet on most men who bathe regularly and don't spit tobacco on the floor." He took a bite of stew. "Have you thought about what you're going to tell Alex?" Nora stared down at her empty plate. "The truth, of course." "That Katherine has passed away and I've come to return his ring and his letters." "And then what?" "What do you mean? After you break his heart, what then? Where will you go?" Nora lifted her chin. "As I said earlier, I can find work. Nogales seems like a growing town." Adam snorted. "It's barely a town at all. And no offense, Miss Zimmerman, but women from the East don't tend to fare well out here unless they've got family or a husband to look after them." "I can look after myself," Nora replied, a hint of steel entering her voice. "I've been doing it for quite some time now." Something in her tone made Adam study her more closely. "What exactly did you do in Boston?" "I worked as a bookkeeper for a dry goods merchant." It wasn't entirely a lie. She had worked for Mr. Peterson's shop until he died and his son had taken over, making it clear that Nora's continued employment would require certain accommodations that she wasn't willing to provide. "A bookkeeper," Adam repeated skeptically. "And you think you'll find similar employment in Arizona territory? Every business needs someone who can keep accounts properly." "True enough, but most businesses out here are small family operations. They can't afford to hire help, especially not for something the owner's wife usually handles." Nora felt a flicker of unease. She hadn't considered that. "Then I'll find something else. I'm adaptable." Adam leaned forward, his expression serious. "Miss Zimmerman, I don't mean to scare you, but this isn't Boston. Life out here is hard, especially for a woman alone. The work is backbreaking, the comforts are few, and the dangers are real." "I'm aware of the challenges." "No, you're not," Adam interrupted. "You think you are, but you have no idea what it's like to face a rattlesnake while gathering firewood, or to hold off Apache raiders while your husband's away, or to watch your crops wither and die in a drought." Nora blinked, taken aback by his vehemence. "You paint a bleak picture, Mr. Embry." "I paint an honest one," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I'm not trying to discourage you. I just want you to understand what you're facing." "I appreciate your concern," Nora said, her voice softening. "Truly, I do. But I have my reasons for coming here, beyond just returning Katherine's ring." "Care to share those reasons?" Nora hesitated. She barely knew this man. Could she trust him with her secrets? "Let's just say there's nothing left for me in Boston." Adam studied her for a long moment, as if trying to read the truth in her eyes. Finally, he nodded. "Fair enough. We all have our ghosts, I suppose." They sat in silence for a moment, the clink of silverware and the low murmur of conversation from other tables filling the gap between them. "When do we leave for the Circle E?" Nora asked finally. "Day after tomorrow," Adam replied. "I need to finish some business here in town first, and you could use the rest. I'm not as delicate as I look, Mr. Embry." The hint of a smile touched his lips again. "I'm starting to see that, Miss Zimmerman." They finished their meal with light conversation, carefully avoiding the more serious topics that hung between them. Adam asked about her journey west, and Nora found herself describing the changing landscape she'd witnessed from the train windows, the vast prairies giving way to rugged mountains and painted deserts. "It's beautiful in its own way," she admitted. "Different from anything I've ever seen." "The West gets in your blood," Adam agreed. "I was born here, but I spent a few years back East Philadelphia when I was younger. Couldn't wait to come home." "What took you to Philadelphia?" A shadow crossed his face. "School. My father had grand ideas about me becoming a lawyer." "But you didn't." "No, I'm better suited to open skies and honest work." He glanced at his pocket watch. "It's getting late. I should let you rest." They parted ways in the hotel lobby, Adam heading back out into the night while Nora climbed the stairs to her room. As she prepared for bed, she found herself thinking about the enigmatic Adam Embry and wondering what his cousin Alexander was like. Were they similar in temperament? In appearance? Would Alexander be as understanding about her deception as Adam had been? She fell asleep wondering what the next few days would bring, and whether she'd made a terrible mistake in coming to Arizona territory. The next day dawned clear and hot. Nora woke with the sun, her body still on Eastern time despite the exhaustion of travel. She dressed carefully in her most practical outfit, a brown skirt and white shirtwaist, and went downstairs for breakfast. Mrs. Hendricks greeted her warmly. "Sleep well, dear." "Very well, thank you." "Good, good. Adam Embry left word that he'd meet you at Donovan's Mercantile at 10. Said you'd need some proper clothes for the ranch." Nora frowned. "I have clothes." Mrs. Hendricks eyed Nora's outfit with motherly concern. "Eastern clothes, honey. You'll need sturdier things out here. Longer skirts to protect your legs from brush, thicker boots for the rocky ground, a good hat to keep the sun off." "I suppose you're right," Nora conceded, "but I can't afford much." "Adam said it's all taken care of." Nora's back stiffened. "No, I won't accept charity," Mrs. Hendricks chuckled. "Honey, it ain't charity if it's from your future family. Besides, I expect Adam's just following Alexander's instructions. Man wants his bride properly outfitted for ranch life." The reminder of her deception made Nora's stomach clench. "I'm not," she began, then stopped herself. "I need to speak with Mr. Embry about this." After breakfast, Nora made her way to Donovan's Mercantile, a large building on the main street that seemed to sell everything from harnesses to hairpins. Adam was already there, examining a display of work gloves. "Good morning, Miss Zimmerman," he said when he spotted her. "Did you sleep well?" "Mrs. Hendricks says you've arranged to pay for my clothing," Nora said without preamble. "I can't allow that." Adam raised an eyebrow. "You'd rather arrive at the Circle E unprepared for ranch life." "I'd rather pay my own way." "With what money, Miss Zimmerman? You said yourself that your funds are limited." "That doesn't mean I need to be beholden to you or your cousin." Adam sighed. "It's not about being beholden. It's about practicality. Alex would expect his bride to have the right gear, and since you're not actually his bride—" "Exactly," Nora interrupted. "Which is why I can't accept gifts meant for Katherine." "They're not gifts for Katherine. They're necessities for you, so you don't die of heat stroke or snakebite before we reach the ranch." His voice softened. "Look, if it makes you feel better, consider it a loan. You can pay me back once you've found that bookkeeping job you're so sure about." Nora hesitated, torn between pride and practicality. "A loan," she said finally, "with interest." The corner of Adam's mouth twitched. "If you insist." For the next hour they moved through the store selecting items Nora would need for the journey to the Circle E and beyond. A wide-brimmed hat, sturdy boots, a longer riding skirt, thick socks, leather gloves, and a canteen. "What about a gun?" Adam asked as they were finishing up. Nora blinked in surprise. A gun? I've never fired one in my life. Then it's time you learned. The desert's dangerous, and not just because of critters. He selected a small revolver from a case near the counter. This Colt .32 should suit you, small enough to handle easily but still effective. Nora eyed the weapon with trepidation. Is it really necessary? Out here? Yes. Adam's expression was deadly serious. I won't always be around to protect you, and neither will Alex. The reminder of Alexander Embry and her impending meeting with him sobered Nora. Very well. But you'll have to teach me how to use it. That was the plan. Adam paid for their purchases, ignoring Nora's discomfort at the total amount. Meet me behind the hotel at noon. We'll have a shooting lesson. They parted ways outside the store, Nora returning to the hotel with her new acquisitions while Adam continued his business in town. As she carefully arranged the items in her room, she couldn't help but wonder at the strange turn her life had taken. A week ago, she'd been in Boston, desperate and afraid. Now she was in Arizona territory, preparing to learn how to shoot a gun from a man she'd just met. At precisely noon, Nora made her way behind the hotel where Adam was waiting with 2 horses, a large bay gelding for himself, and a smaller, calmer-looking mare for her. I didn't know we'd be riding, Nora said, eyeing the horses warily. Best way to get out of town without drawing attention, Adam explained. Besides, you'll need to get comfortable on horseback before our journey to the ranch. He showed her how to mount properly, adjusting her new riding skirt to accommodate the saddle. Nora was relieved to discover that she remembered the basics of riding from childhood lessons, though it had been years since she'd been on a horse. They rode for about 20 minutes, following a small creek away from town until they reached a secluded area where Adam had set up targets, empty cans arranged on a fallen log. First things first, he said as they dismounted. A gun is always loaded, even when it isn't. Never point it at anything you don't intend to shoot. For the next hour, Adam patiently taught Nora the basics of handling and firing the small revolver. She was a quick study, and by the end of the lesson, she was hitting the cans more often than not. Not bad, Adam said approvingly. You've got a steady hand. Thank you. Nora carefully unloaded the gun as he'd shown her, surprising herself with how natural the movement had become. Though I hope I never have to use it for real. That makes 2 of us. Adam helped her reload the weapon and showed her how to carry it safely in the pocket of her new riding skirt. But if you do need it, don't hesitate. Out here, hesitation can get you killed. As they prepared to return to town, Nora found herself studying Adam's profile against the clear blue sky. There was something compelling about him, a quiet strength that she found reassuring. It was more than just his physical presence. It was the sense that he was a man who kept his word, who could be trusted. May I ask you something? She said as they mounted their horses. Of course. Why are you helping me? You could have sent me packing when you realized I wasn't Katherine. Adam considered the question for a moment. I suppose because you reminded me of someone. Who? My sister, Rebecca. She died 3 years ago, cholera. His voice was matter-of-fact, but Nora could hear the pain beneath the words. I'm sorry, she said softly. She was stubborn like you, determined to make her own way. A small smile crossed his face. Drove our father crazy with her independence. What about your mother? She died when I was 10. Becca was just 6. Father raised us alone until I was 16, then he sent me east to school. Adam's expression darkened. I should have stayed, maybe if I had. You can't blame yourself for your sister's death, Nora said gently, can I? I wasn't there when she needed me. He shook his head as if to dispel the memories. Anyway, that's why I'm helping you. Becca would have wanted me to. Nora didn't know how to respond to that, so she simply nodded and followed him back toward town, her thoughts churning. Adam Embry was a more complex man than she'd initially realized, with depths of pain and loyalty that intrigued her despite herself. They spent the remainder of the day making preparations for the journey to the Circle E. Adam showed her how to pack her new belongings efficiently for travel and gave her a detailed map of the territory, pointing out landmarks and water sources along their route. "We'll leave at first light," he said as they finished their planning. "It's a 2-day ride at an easy pace, which is what we'll have to maintain given your inexperience." "I'll be ready," Nora promised. That night she found it difficult to sleep, her mind filled with thoughts of the coming journey and the confrontation that awaited her at its end. What would Alexander Embry say when she told him the truth? Would he be angry, heartbroken? Would he understand why she'd come all this way to break the news in person? And what about Adam? The connection she felt with him was unexpected and unsettling. She'd come to Arizona to deliver bad news and start a new life, not to develop feelings for a man she barely knew, especially not her intended recipient's cousin. Dawn broke clear and cool over Nogales, the desert air still crisp before the heat of the day. Nora was ready when Adam knocked on her door, dressed in her new clothes with her few possessions packed in the saddlebags he'd provided. Mrs. Hendricks insisted on feeding them a hearty breakfast before they departed: eggs, bacon, biscuits, and strong coffee. "You'll need your strength for the journey," she said, pressing an extra package of food into Nora's hands. "For the trail." They set off just as the sun was cresting the horizon, riding north out of town. Adam led the way, his posture relaxed but alert, occasionally pointing out features of the landscape or wildlife Nora might not have noticed. The terrain gradually changed as they rode, the relatively flat desert around Nogales giving way to rolling hills dotted with mesquite and prickly pear cactus. The heat built steadily throughout the morning, and Nora was grateful for her new hat and the canteen of water Adam had insisted she carry. They stopped at midday in the shade of a rocky outcropping, dismounting to rest the horses and eat some of the food Mrs. Hendricks had packed. Nora stretched her aching legs, wincing at the soreness in muscles she hadn't used in years. "You're doing well," Adam commented, noticing her discomfort. "Most Eastern ladies would be complaining by now." "I'm not most Eastern ladies," Nora replied, accepting the jerky he offered her. "Besides, complaining won't make the journey any easier." "True enough." Adam took a long drink from his canteen. "We'll make camp by that creek we passed on the map. Should reach it about an hour before sunset if we keep this pace. And tomorrow, we'll reach Circle E by mid-afternoon, assuming no delays." Nora nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety in her stomach. In just over 24 hours, she'd be face to face with Alexander Embry, the man who'd been expecting to meet his bride. Instead, he'd be confronted with a woman bearing news of death and dashed hopes. They continued their journey after the brief rest, the afternoon heat intensifying until the air shimmered above the rocky ground. Nora found herself mesmerized by the stark beauty of the landscape, the distant purple mountains, the surprising bursts of wildflowers among the cacti, the occasional jackrabbit darting across their path. Adam was a quiet companion, speaking only when necessary but always alert to their surroundings. Occasionally, he'd point out something of interest: the track of a mountain lion, a hawk circling overhead, a particular plant with medicinal properties. "How do you know so much about all this?" Nora asked during one such moment. "Grew up out here," Adam replied simply. "And the Apache who worked for my father taught me a few things. You had Apache workers on your ranch, some, before most were forced onto the reservations." There was a note of regret in his voice. "Good men. Taught me more about surviving in this country than my own father did." Your father didn't approve. My father was a complicated man, Adam said, a hint of old bitterness coloring his words. He had definite ideas about what was proper and what wasn't. Is that why he sent you east to study law? Adam nodded. He wanted me to be something I'm not. We argued about it for years until his death. I'm sorry, Nora said softly. It's hard when parents don't understand their children. You sound like you speak from experience. Nora hesitated, then decided there was no harm in sharing this much of her past. My father was a minister. Very strict, very. Certain about what was right and wrong. He couldn't understand why I preferred numbers to needlework, or why I wanted an education beyond what was necessary to be a good wife and mother. And your mother, she died when I was 12. After that, it was just father and me, and we never quite connected. Nora stared at the horizon, lost in memories. When he died last year, I felt guilty for not missing him more. Grief is complicated, Adam said. Sometimes what we mourn is what might have been, rather than what was. Nora glanced at him, surprised by the insight. Yes, exactly. They rode in companionable silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts as the miles passed beneath their horses' hooves. By late afternoon, Nora was exhausted, her body aching from the unaccustomed exercise, but she refused to complain. As Adam had predicted, they reached the creek just as the sun was beginning to set. It was a small but clear stream running through a shallow gully, with cottonwood trees providing welcome shade along its banks. We'll camp here, Adam said, dismounting and helping Nora down from her horse. There's good water and decent protection from the elements. He showed her how to unsaddle and care for her horse, then set about making a campfire while Nora unpacked their supplies. They worked together with surprising efficiency, as if they'd done this many times before. Once the camp was established, Adam taught Nora how to clean and cook the rabbit he'd shot earlier in the day. The meat was tough but flavorful, especially with the addition of some wild onions and herbs he'd gathered near the creek. You're full of surprises, Mr. Embry, Nora commented as they finished their meal. Law school, Apache survival skills, cooking. Adam smiled, the firelight softening the angles of his face. Life takes us down unexpected paths sometimes. Indeed it does, Nora agreed, thinking of her own journey from Boston bookkeeper to Arizona adventurer. As darkness fell, the desert came alive with sounds: the howl of coyotes, the chirp of crickets, the occasional hoot of an owl. Above them, the sky blazed with more stars than Nora had ever seen, a glittering canopy stretching from horizon to horizon. It's beautiful, she breathed, gazing upward. I've never seen anything like it. One of the benefits of desert life, Adam said, following her gaze. No city lights to dim the view. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds and watching the stars. Nora was acutely aware of Adam's presence beside her, of the warmth radiating from his body in the cool night air. What will you do after we reach Circle E? Adam asked finally. Nora sighed. I don't know, I haven't thought that far ahead. Find work somewhere, I suppose. You could stay at the ranch for a while, Adam suggested. Alex might appreciate the help, especially with his injury. After I tell him about Katherine, Nora shook her head. I doubt he'll want me around. You might be surprised. Alex is a good man and he understands loss better than most. You speak as if you know him well. We grew up together, Adam explained. His father and mine were brothers. When my father died 5 years ago, Alex offered me a partnership in Circle E, but I wanted my own spread. Still, we help each other when needed. And now he needs your help bringing home his bride, Nora said softly. Adam's expression grew serious in the firelight. Nora, there's something you should know about Alex. The use of her first name caught her attention as much as his tone. "What is it?" Before Adam could respond, a distant sound made him tense and hold up a hand for silence. Nora listened, her heart quickening as she made out the unmistakable rhythm of approaching horses. "Stay here," Adam whispered, reaching for his rifle. "If I call out, grab your gun and hide in those rocks." He pointed to a jumble of boulders near the creek. Nora nodded, fear making her throat tight as Adam moved silently away from the firelight, disappearing into the darkness. The minutes stretched endlessly as Nora waited, straining her ears for any sound beyond the normal night noises. Then came a low laugh, followed by Adam's voice. "Relax now. You nearly got yourself shot, Charlie." Relief washed over Nora as Adam returned to the campfire, accompanied by an older man with a weathered face and a shock of white hair beneath a battered hat. Behind them came a younger man leading 3 pack mules. "Nora, this is Charlie Wilkins and his son Ben. They run supplies to the ranches north of here. Charlie, Ben, this is Miss Nora Zimmerman." Charlie tipped his hat. "Madam, hope we didn't scare you too badly." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Wilkins," Nora replied, forcing a smile despite her still racing heart. "Charlie and Ben were headed to Circle E anyway," Adam explained. "They've got some medicines Alex ordered for the ranch." "For his leg?" Nora asked. Charlie exchanged a glance with Adam. "Among other things," he said cryptically. The Wilkinses made their own camp nearby, and soon the 4 of them were sharing coffee around the fire. Charlie proved to be a natural storyteller, regaling them with tales of his 40 years in Arizona territory. "Saw my first automobile last year in Tucson," he told Nora. "Noisy, smelly contraption. Give me a good horse any day." "The world's changing, Pa," Ben said with the patience of someone who'd had this conversation many times. "Those automobiles will be everywhere before long." "Not in my lifetime," Charlie scoffed. "Can't imagine one of those things making it through Rattlesnake Pass or up the side of a mountain." As the night wore on, Nora found herself relaxing in the company of these frontier men. They treated her with a casual respect that was refreshingly different from the formal interactions she was accustomed to in Boston society. When it came time to sleep, Adam showed Nora how to arrange her bedroll for maximum comfort on the hard ground. "Try to rest," he advised. "Tomorrow will be another long day." Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Nora for some time. She lay awake beneath the star-strewn sky, listening to the soft sounds of the sleeping camp and wondering what Adam had been about to tell her about Alexander Embry. Morning came too soon, the desert dawn painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. They broke camp quickly, sharing a simple breakfast of hardtack and dried fruit before continuing their journey. Charlie and Ben rode with them, their pack mules plodding steadily behind. The terrain grew more rugged as they traveled north, with steeper hills and deeper arroyos to navigate. Nora's muscles protested the continued exertion, but she gritted her teeth and pressed on, determined not to slow their progress. Around midday, they crested a ridge and Adam reined in his horse, waiting for Nora to catch up. "There it is," he said, pointing to the valley below. "Circle E," Nora gasped at the sight. The ranch spread across the valley floor, a collection of well-maintained buildings surrounding a large main house. Corrals and barns dotted the property, and in the distance, she could see cattle grazing on the green pastureland fed by a small river. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. "Alex has worked hard to make it what it is," Adam replied. "His father left it in rough shape, but Alex built it into one of the most successful ranches in the territory." They began the descent into the valley, following a well-worn trail that zigzagged down the steep hillside. As they approached the ranch, Nora's anxiety returned full force. Soon, she would meet Alexander Embry and deliver the news that would shatter his hopes for the future. A group of ranch hands noticed their approach and called out a greeting. Adam waved in response, guiding them toward the main house, a substantial two-story structure built of adobe and timber, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. As they rode into the yard, the front door opened, and a man stepped onto the porch. He was tall like Adam, but broader through the shoulders, with dark hair and a full beard. Most noticeably, his right leg was encased in a wooden splint, and he leaned heavily on a crutch. "Alex," Adam called, dismounting and moving to help Nora from her horse. "We've brought visitors." Alexander Embry's gaze fixed on Nora, his expression unreadable as Adam led her toward the porch. "Miss Zimmerman," Adam said formally, "may I present my cousin, Alexander Embry? Alex, this is Miss Nora Zimmerman from Boston." Nora climbed the porch steps, her heart hammering in her chest. "Mr. Embry," she said, extending her hand, "I'm very pleased to meet you." Alexander took her hand, his grip firm despite the awkwardness of balancing on his crutch. "Miss Zimmerman," he said, his voice deeper than Adam's but with the same hint of an educated accent, "welcome to Circle E." His eyes, a darker blue than Adam's, studied her face intently. "Though I confess, you're not who I was expecting." "No," Nora admitted, withdrawing her hand. "I'm not, and I believe we should speak privately about that." Alexander nodded, something like resignation crossing his features. "Of course, please come inside." He glanced at his cousin. "Adam, would you see to the horses, and show Charlie and Ben where to unload their supplies, of course." Adam's eyes met Nora's briefly. "Take your time. I'll be around if you need me." Nora followed Alexander into the house, noting the simple but comfortable furnishings of the front parlor. Despite his injury, Alexander moved with surprising grace, gesturing for her to take a seat on a leather sofa while he lowered himself carefully into an armchair opposite. "Now," he said once they were settled, "I believe you have something difficult to tell me, Miss Zimmerman." Nora took a deep breath, her hand going to the pocket where Katherine's ring rested. "Mr. Embry, I came here to tell you that Katherine Winters passed away 6 weeks ago. Influenza." "I was with her at the end." Alexander closed his eyes briefly, pain etching lines around his mouth. "I see. I am very sorry to hear that. Were you close to Miss Winters?" "She was my dearest friend," Nora replied, her voice catching. "We shared lodgings in Boston for 3 years. And she spoke of me." There was an odd note in his voice that Nora couldn't quite identify. "She treasured your letters," Nora said carefully. "They brought her great joy in her final months." Alexander nodded slowly. "I appreciate you traveling all this way to tell me in person, Miss Zimmerman." It was unexpectedly kind. Nora reached into her pocket and withdrew the small velvet box containing his ring. "Katherine asked me to return this to you," she said, placing it on the table between them, "and your letters as well." She set the bundle beside the ring. Alexander made no move to take either item. Instead, he studied Nora with those penetrating blue eyes. "Did Adam tell you about my condition?" The question caught her off guard. "Your leg. He mentioned you'd broken it." A humorless smile twisted Alexander's lips. "The leg will heal." "I meant my other condition." I don't understand." Alexander leaned forward slightly. "Miss Zimmerman, I have consumption. The doctors give me perhaps a year at most." Nora stared at him, shocked. "But your letters to Katherine." "You never mentioned." "Of course not," Alexander interrupted. "What man would admit such a thing when courting a woman?" He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "I intended to tell her upon her arrival, of course. To give her the choice to stay or return to Boston with my financial assistance." "I'm so sorry," Nora said softly. understanding now the medicines Charlie had brought and the exchange of glances between the men. Life is full of ironies, isn't it? Alexander mused. I sought a bride, hoping for companionship in my final days, only to discover she's preceded me to the grave. He gestured to the letters. You've read them, I assume? Nora flushed. Some. Katherine showed them to me. Then you know I was honest about everything else: the ranch, my circumstances, my hopes for a partner rather than just a wife. He studied her face again. You didn't come all this way just to return a ring and some letters, did you, Miss Zimmerman? Nora hesitated, then decided that this man deserved complete honesty. No, I was hoping to make a fresh start. Boston holds painful memories for me now, I see. Alexander was silent for a moment, his fingers tapping thoughtfully against the arm of his chair. Perhaps we can help each other then. What do you mean? I still need someone to help manage Circle E, especially now. He gestured to his splinted leg. And after I'm gone, I'd like to know the ranch is in good hands. Nora frowned, confused. But surely Adam has his own spread to run, Alexander interrupted. He's been helping out because we're family, but his heart is with his own land. He leaned forward again, his expression earnest. What I'm proposing, Miss Zimmerman, is a business arrangement. Stay at Circle E. Learn the operations. Help me put everything in order before. He trailed off, then continued more firmly. In return, I'll provide you with a good wage and a place to live. Nora was stunned. Mr. Embry, you hardly know me. I know you were honest when you could have pretended to be Katherine. I know you traveled thousands of miles to deliver difficult news in person. And I know my cousin trusts you, which says a great deal about your character. Alexander's gaze was steady. Besides, you said yourself that you're good with numbers. The ranch books could use an educated eye. The offer was tempting, more than tempting. It would provide Nora with exactly what she needed: employment, shelter, and time to figure out her next steps. But there was something unsettling about it as well. What would people think, she asked. An unmarried woman living at your ranch. Alexander waved a dismissive hand. We're not in Boston, Miss Zimmerman. Out here, practicality often trumps propriety. Besides, Mrs. Garcia, our housekeeper, lives in the main house as well. Your reputation would be quite safe. Before Nora could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Adam entered, his expression guarded. Sorry to intrude, but Charlie needs to know if you want him to unpack the medicines or just leave them. Tell him to bring them in, Alexander replied. And Adam, Miss Zimmerman and I were just discussing the possibility of her staying on at Circle E for a while. Adam's eyebrows rose slightly. Were you? Yes. I've offered her employment managing the ranch books and helping with correspondence. What do you think? A complex array of emotions crossed Adam's face before settling into a neutral expression. I think Miss Zimmerman would be an asset to Circle E, if that's what she wants. Alexander turned back to Nora. Well, Miss Zimmerman, what do you say? Nora looked from one cousin to the other, weighing her options. The practical part of her knew this was an excellent opportunity, perhaps better than anything she could have hoped for. But there was also the complication of her growing feelings for Adam, feelings that would only intensify if she remained at Circle E. I need time to consider your offer, Mr. Embry, she said finally. Of course, Alexander nodded. Take all the time you need. You're welcome to stay as our guest in the meantime. Thank you. Nora stood, suddenly needing fresh air and space to think. If you'll excuse me, I'd like to rest for a bit. The journey was tiring. Certainly. Adam can show you to a guest room. Alexander remained seated, fatigue evident in the lines of his face. We'll speak again at supper. Adam led Nora upstairs to a pleasant room at the back of the house, overlooking a small garden. Are you all right? he asked once they were alone. He told me about his illness, Nora said quietly. Why didn't you warn me? I tried last night at the campfire. Adam sighed. Alex is private about his condition. It wasn't my place to tell you without his permission. He's dying and he's offering me a job. Nora shook her head in disbelief. It feels wrong somehow. Like I'm taking advantage. You'd be helping him as much as he's helping you, Adam pointed out. Alex needs someone he can trust to manage things as his health declines, and after. He didn't finish the sentence. What happens to Circle E after he dies? Nora asked. That depends on his will. As his closest relative, I'd inherit unless he specifies otherwise. Adam's expression was troubled. But I can't run 2 ranches, especially with mine being a day's ride from here. So you'd sell Circle E, probably, unless. Adam hesitated. Unless there was someone willing to manage it for me. The implication hung in the air between them, unspoken but clear. If Nora stayed, if she learned the ranch operations as Alexander suggested, she might have a place at Circle E even after his death. I need time to think, Nora said again. Of course. Adam moved toward the door. Rest. I'll come for you when supper's ready. Left alone, Nora unpacked her few belongings and washed the trail dust from her face and hands. The room was simple but comfortable, with a brass bed, a pine dresser, and a washstand with a porcelain basin. A colorful quilt covered the bed, and curtains of the same fabric framed the window. She sat on the edge of the bed, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. When she'd left Boston, she'd never imagined finding herself in this situation, offered employment by a dying rancher and developing feelings for his cousin. It was like something from a dime novel, not real life. Yet it was real. Alexander Embry was dying, and he needed help. Adam Embry was attracted to her. She was almost certain of it, but conflicted about his cousin's offer. And Nora herself was torn between practical considerations and emotional ones. A soft knock at the door roused her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting Adam. Instead, a middle-aged Hispanic woman entered, carrying a tray with a pitcher of water and a glass. "Señorita Zimmerman, I am Mrs. Garcia, the housekeeper. I thought you might be thirsty after your journey." "Thank you, Mrs. Garcia. That's very kind." Nora accepted the water gratefully, suddenly aware of how parched she was. Mrs. Garcia studied her with shrewd, dark eyes. "It is good that you have come. The patron needs help, though he is too proud to admit it." "Mr. Embry has offered me a position," Nora admitted. "I'm considering it." "Bueno. He is a good man, the patron. He deserves peace in his final months." Mrs. Garcia's expression softened. "And Señor Adam, he visits often but cannot stay. His own ranch demands much of him." "I understand they're quite close." "Like brothers," Mrs. Garcia confirmed, "since they were niños. Always together, always watching out for each other." She moved toward the door. "Rest now. Supper will be ready at 6. After Mrs. Garcia left, Nora lay down on the bed, intending to close her eyes for just a few minutes. Instead, she fell into a deep sleep, exhausted from the physical and emotional demands of the past few days. When she awoke, the light had changed, golden afternoon sunlight slanting through the window. A glance at the small clock on the dresser showed it was nearly 5:30. Nora rose quickly, washing her face again and changing into her best dress, a simple navy blue with white trim at the collar and cuffs. She was just finishing pinning up her hair when another knock came at the door. This time it was Adam, freshly shaven and dressed in clean clothes. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Yes, thank you. The rest was exactly what I needed. Good. Alex is waiting downstairs." Adam offered his arm, a gentlemanly gesture that seemed at odds with his frontier appearance. "I should warn you, he invited a few neighbors to join us for supper." I think he wants to introduce you to the community." Nora hesitated, her hand on his sleeve. "But I haven't given him an answer about staying." "I know, but Alex has always been decisive. Once he makes up his mind about something, he tends to move forward as if it's already settled." Nora wasn't sure she liked the sound of that, but it was too late to protest, as Adam led her downstairs to the parlor where voices and laughter indicated guests had already arrived. Alexander Embry was holding court from his armchair, looking more energetic than he had earlier. Beside him stood Charlie Wilkins, and seated on a nearby sofa was an older couple whom Nora didn't recognize. "Ah, here she is," Alexander said when he spotted Nora. "Miss Zimmerman, allow me to introduce Judge and Mrs. Parker. They're our nearest neighbors, just 3 miles east of here." The judge, a portly man with mutton chop whiskers, rose to his feet with old-fashioned courtesy. "Miss Zimmerman, a pleasure. Alex tells us you'll be helping him manage Circle E's affairs." Nora glanced at Alexander, who at least had the grace to look slightly abashed. "Mr. Embry has made a generous offer," she said carefully. "I'm still considering it." Mrs. Parker, a thin woman with sharp features, raised an eyebrow. "A young lady alone on a cattle ranch, most unusual." "Miss Zimmerman has experience with bookkeeping and business correspondence," Alexander interjected smoothly. "Skills that Circle E badly needs, especially with my current limitations." He gestured to his splinted leg, though everyone in the room knew he meant his illness as well. "Well, we're always happy to welcome new neighbors," Judge Parker said genially, "especially ones as charming as Miss Zimmerman." The conversation moved on to local matters, the weather, cattle prices, news from Nogales, while Nora struggled to maintain her composure. Alexander had placed her in an awkward position by announcing her employment as a fait accompli, and she wasn't sure whether to be angry or resigned. When Mrs. Garcia announced that supper was ready, Adam offered Nora his arm again, leaning close to whisper, "I'm sorry about that. Alex can be presumptuous." "Is that what we're calling it?" Nora murmured, though she softened the words with a small smile. The dining room, like the rest of the house, was comfortable rather than ostentatious. A long oak table dominated the space, set with good china and silver that spoke of Alexander's Eastern upbringing. Mrs. Garcia and a young Mexican girl served a hearty meal of roast beef, potatoes, and fresh vegetables from the garden Nora had glimpsed from her window. Throughout supper, Nora found herself the focus of curious but mostly friendly questions from the Parkers and Charlie Wilkins. She answered truthfully about her background in Boston, though she was vague about the circumstances that had brought her west. No one mentioned Katherine Winters, for which Nora was grateful. "Miss Zimmerman was an excellent shot during our journey," Adam remarked during a lull in the conversation. "Picked up handling a revolver faster than anyone I've ever taught." "Is that so?" Judge Parker looked impressed. "A lady of hidden talents." "Hardly," Nora demurred. "Mr. Embry is being kind. I have much to learn about frontier life." "And Circle E is the perfect place to learn it," Alexander said, his gaze direct. "Wouldn't you agree, Adam?" There was a subtle challenge in the question that Nora didn't understand. Adam seemed to, however, for his jaw tightened slightly before he nodded. "Circle E has much to offer," he said neutrally. As the meal progressed, Nora became increasingly aware of an undercurrent between the cousins. There was no hostility, their affection for each other was evident, but there was definitely tension, and she suspected it had something to do with her. After supper, the men retired to the parlor for brandy while Mrs. Parker insisted on helping Mrs. Garcia with the dishes, leaving Nora momentarily alone. She took the opportunity to step outside onto the back porch, breathing in the cool evening air and gazing at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. It's quite a sight, isn't it? Alexander's voice came from behind her. Nora turned to find him standing in the doorway, leaning on his crutch. "Mr. Embry, you shouldn't be out here in the cold air. Please call me Alex, and a little night air won't kill me any faster than the consumption already is." He moved to stand beside her at the porch railing. "I owe you an apology for this evening. I shouldn't have presented your employment as settled when you haven't yet decided." "No, you shouldn't have," Nora agreed, but without anger. "Though I understand why you did it. Do you?" "You're running out of time," she said softly. "You can't afford to wait for decisions to be made at a leisurely pace." Alex nodded, a wry smile crossing his bearded face. "Precisely, though that doesn't excuse my presumption." He studied her profile in the fading light. "Have you made a decision?" Nora took a deep breath. "I'll stay, Mr. Embry Alex, at least for a while, but I have conditions." "I expected no less. Name them." "First, I want a proper contract with clear terms of employment, duties, and compensation." "Easily done." "Second, I want to learn everything about running Circle E, not just the bookkeeping. If I'm to be of real help to you, I need to understand all aspects of the ranch." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Even the cattle operations? That's hardly ladies' work." "Especially the cattle operations," Nora insisted. "I don't intend to handle the physical labor, of course, but I should understand how it all works if I'm to manage the books properly." "Very well. Adam can teach you most of it when he visits. He knows Circle E almost as well as I do." Alex's expression turned curious. "Any other conditions?" Nora hesitated, then decided to address the elephant in the room. "I'd like to know your plans for Circle E after you're gone." A shadow crossed Alex's face, but he nodded. "A fair question. As things stand now, Adam would inherit as my next of kin. But he has his own ranch to run, which presents a problem." He mentioned as much. "I've been considering alternatives," Alex admitted. "One option would be to sell Circle E to one of the larger outfits that's been trying to buy me out for years. But I hate the thought of all my work and my father's before me being swallowed up by some corporation." "What other options are you considering?" Alex gave her a measuring look. "That depends on you, Miss Zimmerman." "Me? If you prove as capable as I believe you'll be, I might consider leaving Circle E to you and Adam jointly, with the understanding that you'd manage it while he provides the knowledge of ranching that you lack." Nora stared at him, stunned. "You'd leave part of your ranch to someone you've just met. As I said, it would depend on how things progress over the coming months." Alex's expression was earnest. "But I'm a good judge of character, Miss Zimmerman. I believe you're exactly what Circle E needs right now." Before Nora could respond, the door opened again and Adam stepped onto the porch. "There you are," he said, his gaze moving between them. "The Parkers are leaving and want to say goodbye." "Of course." Alex turned back to Nora. "Think about what I've said, Miss Zimmerman. We'll draw up a formal agreement tomorrow." As he made his way back inside with careful steps, Adam remained on the porch, his expression troubled. "What did he say to you?" Nora wasn't sure how much to reveal. "He apologized for presuming I'd accepted the position and outlined what my duties would be." "And you've decided to stay?" There was an odd note in Adam's voice, something between hope and concern. "For now," Nora confirmed. "It seems the most practical solution for everyone." Adam nodded slowly. "It is practical," he agreed, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. "Alex needs the help and you need a fresh start." "Exactly." They stood in silence for a moment, the night sounds of the desert filling the space between them. Finally, Adam spoke again, his voice low. "Just be careful, Nora. Alex is a good man, the best I know, but he's also desperate. He wants to make sure Circle E continues after he's gone, and he'll do whatever it takes to ensure that." "What are you saying?" just that you should be clear about what you're agreeing to." Adam's blue eyes were serious in the moonlight. "Make sure it's what you want, not just what Alex wants for you." With that cryptic warning, he offered his arm to escort her back inside, leaving Nora with more questions than answers about her future at Circle E. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity as Nora settled into life at the ranch. True to his word, Alex had a formal contract drawn up, outlining her duties and compensation in clear terms. The salary was generous, more than she'd made as a bookkeeper in Boston, and included room and board in the main house. Mrs. Garcia welcomed Nora into the household routine with warmth and patience, teaching her the rhythms of ranch life and introducing her to the other workers. Most were Hispanic men who had worked at Circle E for years, loyal to Alex and respectful of Nora once they understood her position. The ranch books were in better shape than Nora had expected, though there were areas where her expertise improved the system. Alex was an intelligent man who had run his business well, but his declining health had caused some details to slip through the cracks. As for Alex himself, Nora found him to be a complex character, brilliant and driven, with a dry wit that often caught her by surprise. His illness was progressive, with good days and bad, but he pushed himself relentlessly, refusing to concede to his condition until his body forced him to rest. Adam visited Circle E regularly, at least twice a week, ostensibly to check on his cousin's health and to help with ranch operations. But Nora knew his visits had as much to do with her as with Alex. There was an undeniable attraction between them, a pull that grew stronger with each encounter. True to her conditions, Nora insisted on learning all aspects of the ranch operation. Adam proved an excellent teacher, patient and thorough as he explained the intricacies of cattle breeding, grazing rotations, and water management. Sometimes he took her on horseback tours of the property, showing her the boundaries and landmarks that defined Circle E. During one such ride, about 3 weeks after her arrival, they stopped at a high point overlooking the valley. The autumn sun cast a golden light over the landscape, making the river glitter like a ribbon of silver through the green pastureland. "It's magnificent," Nora said, gazing out over the vista. "I never imagined I'd find such beauty in the desert." Adam nodded, his eyes on the horizon. "That's what my father used to say. He came west after the Civil War looking for a place to start over. The moment he saw this valley, he knew he'd found it. You must have loved growing up here." "I did." Adam's expression softened with memory. "Alex and I spent every summer together, riding these hills, swimming in the river, getting into all sorts of trouble." "And then you were sent east to school." "Yes. My father had grand plans for me that didn't include becoming a rancher." Adam's mouth twisted in a wry smile. "He wanted me to be a lawyer, then a judge, maybe even a politician someday, carrying on the family name in a way he considered worthy. But you came back." "As soon as I could. I finished law school to please him, but the day after graduation, I boarded a train west and never looked back." Adam turned to look at her, his blue eyes serious. "What about you, Nora? What drove you from Boston besides Katherine's death?" Nora had been expecting this question, though she'd managed to avoid it until now. She took a deep breath, deciding that Adam deserved the truth. "After my father died, I had few options. I had some savings, but not enough to live independently for long. I took a position as a bookkeeper for a dry goods merchant named Mr. Peterson. The position you mentioned before." "Yes. Mr. Peterson was elderly and kind. He valued my work and paid me fairly." Nora's hands tightened on her reins. "But he died last year and his son took over the business." "And the son wasn't as kind." Nora's cheeks flushed with the memory. "He made it clear that my continued employment would require Additional services. Adam's expression darkened. I see. When I refused, he dismissed me. Finding another position proved difficult. Mr. Peterson the younger made certain that my reputation was questionable. Nora stared at the horizon, unable to meet Adam's gaze. Katherine was already corresponding with Alex by then. When she fell ill, when it became clear she wouldn't recover, she suggested I come in her place. To marry Alex. Adam's voice was carefully neutral. No, at least not at first. Nora finally looked at him. She thought I could tell him in person, return his ring, and perhaps find work in Arizona. A fresh start away from Boston's gossip. But something changed, Nora nodded slowly. As Katherine grew weaker, she began to worry about Alex. She'd come to care for him through their letters, even though they'd never met. She hated the thought of him waiting for a bride who would never arrive. She hesitated, then admitted, the night before she died, she asked me to consider taking her place not just in delivering the news, but in becoming his wife. Adam's jaw tightened. And that's why you came, to marry a man you'd never met. No. I came to tell Alex the truth about Katherine, as I did. Nora's chin lifted slightly. But I won't deny that I considered the possibility. Katherine had shown me his letters. He seemed kind, intelligent, someone I could respect if not love immediately. She sighed. Of course, that was before I knew about his illness. Would that have changed your mind? If he weren't dying, the question hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to address. I don't know, Nora answered honestly. Perhaps, but it's moot now. Alex and I have a business arrangement, nothing more. Adam studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Alex has grown fond of you, he said finally. I can see it in the way he looks at you, the way he includes you in every decision about Circle E. He's a kind employer, it's more than that, Adam interrupted. He's lonely, Nora. He's facing the end of his life with no one to share his burden. Nora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. What are you suggesting, Adam? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm merely observing. Adam turned his horse back toward the trail. We should head back. The light will be failing soon. They rode in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Nora couldn't shake the feeling that Adam was trying to warn her about something, but his cryptic comments raised more questions than they answered. As they approached the ranch buildings, Adam spoke again. Whatever happens, Nora, remember that you have choices. Don't let Alex's plans for Circle E dictate your future. Before she could ask what he meant, they were greeted by Mrs. Garcia, who hurried out from the main house with an anxious expression. Senor Adam, Miss Nora, thank goodness you've returned. The patron has had a bad spell. The doctor is with him now. Adam was off his horse in an instant, striding toward the house with long steps. Nora followed as quickly as she could, fear constricting her chest. They found Alex in his bedroom, propped up against pillows, his face ashen beneath his beard. Dr. Matthews, a competent young physician from the nearest town, was packing up his medical bag. Ah, Adam, Nora, Alex said, his voice weaker than usual but still steady. No need to look so concerned. I merely overexerted myself this morning. He had a hemorrhage, Dr. Matthews corrected bluntly. A small one, but it could have been worse. He needs complete rest for at least a week. A week, Alex protested. Impossible. The cattle can wait, Adam interrupted firmly, or I can handle whatever needs doing. You have your own ranch to run, Alex argued. Ben can manage for a few days. Adam's tone brooked no argument. Nora and I will keep Circle E running while you rest. Alex looked like he wanted to protest further, but a coughing fit prevented him from speaking. When it subsided, he sank back against the pillows, clearly exhausted. Very well, he conceded. A few days, but I want daily reports on everything. Of course, Nora assured him, moving to his bedside. We'll keep you informed about every decision. Dr. Matthews gave them instructions for Alex's care: plenty of fluids, regular doses of the medicine he'd left, and absolutely no exertion. And I mean none, he emphasized. No reading reports, no giving orders, nothing that might agitate him. After the doctor left, Adam and Nora conferred briefly in the hallway. "This is worse than he's letting on," Adam said in a low voice. "I've never seen him give in so easily. Should I send for a specialist from Tucson?" Adam shook his head. "Matthews is good and he knows Alex's case. There's nothing more to be done, except make him comfortable and try to slow the progression." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Nora had come to recognize as a sign of stress. "I'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll work out a plan for managing both ranches while he recovers." Nora nodded, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach at the prospect of working closely with Adam for the next week. "I'll sit with him first," she offered. "You should get something to eat and rest yourself." Adam squeezed her hand gratefully, the brief contact sending warmth through her body. "Thank you, Nora, for everything." The next few days established a new routine at Circle E. Adam took charge of the cattle operations, working alongside the ranch hands during the day. Nora managed the household, the accounts and correspondence, while also taking shifts sitting with Alex. Despite Dr. Matthews's orders, Alex insisted on being kept informed about ranch affairs. Nora found herself acting as an intermediary, filtering information to reduce his anxiety while still keeping him involved enough to prevent frustration. On the fourth day of this arrangement, Nora was reviewing the supply ledgers in the small office off the main parlor when Adam found her. He'd spent the morning checking fence lines on the eastern boundary and looked tired but satisfied. "Everything in order?" he asked, leaning against the door frame. "As far as I can tell," Nora replied, pushing aside the ledger. "Though I'm still learning the rhythms of ranch supplies. It's different from a dry goods store." Adam smiled. "You're a quick study. Alex says you've already streamlined the ordering process." "He's been talking to the hands behind my back, hasn't he?" Nora tried to sound stern, but her amusement showed through. "Guilty as charged. He cornered poor Miguel this morning and interrogated him about yesterday's roundup." Adam shook his head fondly. "That man is the most stubborn creature on God's earth." "He's worried about Circle E," Nora said, understanding in her voice. "It's his life's work, I know." Adam entered the office fully, taking a seat across from Nora's desk. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about, actually. Alex's plans for the ranch after he's gone." Nora set down her pen, giving Adam her full attention. "He mentioned leaving it to us jointly. Has he spoken to you about that?" "He has. In fact, he's already drawn up the papers with Judge Parker." Adam's expression was troubled. "But there's a condition he didn't tell you about." "What condition?" Adam hesitated, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Alex believes Circle E needs two people to run it properly, someone with ranching experience and someone with business acumen. He's convinced that you and I are the right combination." "That seems reasonable," Nora said, not understanding his concern. "The condition is that we would need to be married." Nora stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Married, you and I?" Adam nodded, his blue eyes watching her reaction closely. "Alex believes it's the only way to ensure Circle E stays intact. A business partnership could dissolve, but marriage—" He trailed off, letting her fill in the blanks. That's absurd." Nora stood, too agitated to remain seated. "We barely know each other, and to make an inheritance conditional on marriage, it's almost medieval." "I agree," Adam said, surprising her. "I told him as much, but Alex is convinced it's the only way to protect his legacy." He sighed, running a hand through his hair again. He's dying, Nora. He's desperate to put his affairs in order, to know that everything he's worked for won't be dismantled after he's gone. Nora paced the small office, trying to process this revelation. When was he planning to tell me about this condition? Soon, I imagine. He's having Judge Parker come out next week to finalize his will. Adam watched her movements, his expression unreadable. I thought you should hear it from me first, so you'd have time to think. Think about marrying a man I've known for less than a month. Nora shook her head incredulously. Adam, surely you can't be considering this. I'm considering what's best for Circle E, he said carefully. And for Alex's peace of mind in his final months. At the cost of our freedom to choose our own partners. Nora's voice rose slightly. That's too high a price even for Circle E. Adam stood, moving to intercept her pacing. He placed his hands on her shoulders, forcing her to meet his gaze. Nora, listen to me. I'm not suggesting we agree to Alex's conditions. I'm just telling you about them so you're prepared when he brings it up. The warmth of his hands through her shirtwaist was distracting, making it hard for Nora to concentrate on his words. And what will you tell him when he does? The truth. That while I care deeply for Circle E, I won't enter into a marriage of convenience, even to inherit it. Adam's eyes held her steadily, and neither should you. Nora searched his face, looking for hidden meanings behind his words. Even though you love this land, even though Circle E is as much your heritage as his, even then. Adam's grip on her shoulders tightened slightly. Marriage should be about love, Nora, not property or obligation. Something in his tone made her heart beat faster. And if there were feelings involved, would that change your answer? The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken emotions. Adam's gaze dropped to her lips for a fleeting moment before returning to her eyes. That would depend, he said softly, on whether those feelings were reciprocated. Before Nora could respond, the door to the office swung open and Mrs. Garcia appeared, her expression harried. Miss Nora, Senor Adam the patron is asking for you both. He seems quite agitated. Adam released Nora's shoulders reluctantly. We'll be right there, Mrs. Garcia. As the housekeeper hurried away, Nora took a steadying breath. We should go. Yes. Adam stepped back, creating distance between them. But Nora, this conversation isn't over. I know, she replied, straightening her shirtwaist with trembling hands. We'll finish it later. They found Alex sitting up in bed, his color better than it had been in days but his expression stormy. There you are, he said as they entered. I've been waiting for nearly an hour. Sorry, Alex, Adam apologized. I was checking the eastern fences and Nora was reviewing the supply ledgers. Together, Alex's gaze moved between them, too perceptive for comfort. We were discussing ranch business, Nora said, moving to adjust his pillows. How are you feeling? Better. Well enough to get out of this bed despite what Matthews says. Alex brushed aside her ministrations impatiently. But that's not why I called for you. Judge Parker is coming tomorrow, not next week as planned. I need to finalize some legal matters. Adam and Nora exchanged a glance, both knowing what those legal matters entailed. Alex, Adam began carefully, are you sure this is the right time? You're still recovering. I'm dying, cousin, Alex interrupted bluntly. Every day counts now. I can't afford to wait for a convenient time. The stark reminder of his condition silenced any further objections. Nora moved to sit in the chair beside his bed, taking his hand in hers. What do you need from us? Alex's expression softened as he looked at her. Just your presence tomorrow. There are matters we need to discuss, all three of us. His gaze shifted to Adam. Important decisions about the future of Circle E. We'll be here, Adam promised, but you should rest now. Dr. Matthews was very clear about limiting exertion. Matthews fusses too much, Alex grumbled, but he settled back against his pillows. Fine, I'll rest. But tomorrow we settle everything. After ensuring Alex was comfortable, Nora and Adam left his room, closing the door quietly behind them. He knows, Nora whispered as they moved down the hallway, that I told you about his plan, probably. Alex doesn't miss much. Adam guided her toward the back porch, away from curious ears. The question is, what are we going to tell him tomorrow? The porch was bathed in late afternoon sunlight, the air cool but pleasant. Nora leaned against the railing, gathering her thoughts. I can't agree to his conditions, she said finally. It wouldn't be fair to either of us. I agree. Adam stood beside her, their shoulders almost touching. But rejecting his plan outright will devastate him. He needs to believe Circle E will continue after he's gone. Then we need to offer an alternative, Nora said, thinking aloud. Some arrangement that protects the ranch without forcing us into marriage. Such as a formal business partnership, perhaps, with clear terms and conditions that can't be easily dissolved. Nora frowned, considering possibilities. Or a trust of some kind with stipulations about how the property can be used or sold. Adam nodded slowly. Those might work. Judge Parker would know the legal options better than we do. They spent the next hour discussing alternatives, weighing the pros and cons of different arrangements that might satisfy Alex's desire to keep Circle E intact without imposing unreasonable conditions on their personal lives. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, Adam turned to face Nora directly. There's another option we haven't discussed, he said quietly. What's that? We could agree to his terms. Nora stared at him, stunned. You just said you wouldn't enter into a marriage of convenience. I did. Adam took a step closer, his eyes intent on hers. But what if it wasn't just about convenience? What if there were other reasons to consider it? Nora's heart began to race. What reasons? Instead of answering, Adam closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to frame her face with gentle firmness. These raisins, he murmured, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was tentative at first, a question more than a declaration. But when Nora responded, her hands sliding up to his shoulders, it deepened into something more powerful. Heat bloomed between them, a connection that transcended the physical and spoke of possibilities neither had dared to voice. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since I first saw you in Nogales, he admitted. When I told you I wasn't the woman you ordered, Nora recalled, a smile touching her lips. And I said I wasn't the man you expected. Adam's thumb traced the curve of her cheek. I'd say we were both right, wouldn't you? Nora laughed softly. Definitely. I never expected to find someone like you in Arizona territory. And I certainly wasn't looking for an Eastern bookkeeper with a talent for shooting and a mind sharper than most men I know. Adam's expression grew serious again. Nora, I'm not proposing marriage to satisfy Alex's conditions. It's far too soon for that. But I am asking for a chance to court you properly, to see if what's growing between us might lead in that direction naturally. Nora considered his words carefully. She was strongly attracted to Adam, and their conversations over the past weeks had revealed a compatibility of mind and spirit that suggested the potential for something deeper. But marriage was a serious commitment, especially in a place as challenging as the Arizona frontier. I'd like that, she said finally. A proper courtship, I mean, but Adam, we still need to address Alex's plans for tomorrow. We do. Adam stepped back slightly, though he kept hold of her hand. I think our best approach is honesty. We tell him that while we care for each other and are exploring those feelings, we're not ready for marriage. And then we present the alternatives we've discussed. He'll be disappointed. Yes, but he's a reasonable man beneath his stubborn exterior. He wants us to be happy as well as secure Circle E's future." Adam squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Trust me, Nora, it will work out." That night, Nora lay awake long after she'd gone to bed, her mind replaying the kiss on the porch and the conversation that followed. Adam Embry wanted to court her. The thought sent a thrill through her that was equal parts excitement and trepidation. Was she ready for this? She'd come to Arizona to escape the constraints of Boston society, to build a new life on her own terms. Becoming involved with Adam complicated those plans, binding her to Circle E and the decisions being made about its future. Yet she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him, not just physical attraction, though that was certainly present, but a deeper connection based on shared values and mutual respect. Adam saw her as an equal, valued her intelligence and independence rather than viewing them as threats to his masculinity, as so many men did. And then there was Alex, dying but still fighting to secure his legacy. Could she and Adam find a solution that would give him peace without compromising their own futures? With these questions swirling in her mind, Nora finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of wide open spaces, thundering cattle, and a pair of blue eyes that seemed to see into her very soul. Judge Parker arrived shortly after breakfast the next morning, his portly frame filling the doorway of the main house as Mrs. Garcia ushered him in. He carried a leather portfolio tucked under one arm and wore an expression of practiced solemnity that Nora suspected came with his judicial office. "Miss Zimmerman, good morning," he greeted her formally. "And Mr. Embry, I trust Alexander is well enough for our meeting." "He's been looking forward to it, Judge," Adam replied, shaking the older man's hand. "He's in the study as he insisted on getting out of bed for this occasion." "Stubborn as always, I see," Judge Parker said with a hint of fondness. "Well, let's not keep him waiting." Alex was indeed in the study, seated in a high-backed leather chair near the window. He looked pale but determined, his beard neatly trimmed and his clothing formal despite his illness. A fire crackled in the small hearth, taking the chill off the autumn morning. "Judge Parker," Alex greeted, extending his hand without rising. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Of course, my friend. I've brought the documents we discussed." The judge placed his portfolio on the desk, then turned to Adam and Nora, who had followed him into the room. "Shall we get straight to business, please?" Alex said, gesturing for everyone to sit. "Time is one luxury I no longer possess." The judge cleared his throat, opening his portfolio and withdrawing several official-looking documents. "I've prepared the will according to your instructions, Alexander. Upon your death, Circle E Ranch, including all land, livestock, buildings, and associated assets, will pass to Mr. Adam Embry and Miss Nora Zimmerman as joint owners, contingent upon their marriage within 6 months of your passing." Nora glanced at Adam, who gave her a reassuring nod before addressing his cousin. "Alex, before we proceed, Nora and I would like to discuss the conditions of the inheritance." Alex's expression tightened. "You told her?" "I did," Adam confirmed. "She had a right to know what you were planning." "And you object?" It wasn't a question. Alex looked at Nora, his blue eyes so similar to Adam's yet somehow older, wearier, searching her face. "Both of you?" Nora leaned forward slightly, choosing her words with care. "Alex, I'm deeply honored by your trust in me, especially considering how short a time we've known each other. But making our inheritance conditional on marriage puts a burden on both Adam and me that seems unnecessary." "Unnecessary," Alex repeated. "Circle E needs both of you to survive. Adam knows ranching but hates the bookkeeping. You understand business but not cattle. Together, you're exactly what this place needs. We don't disagree with that assessment," Adam said calmly, but there are other ways to achieve the same result without forcing a marriage, such as a business partnership with binding terms, Nora suggested, or a trust that specifies how the property must be managed. Judge Parker cleared his throat again. If I may, there are several legal structures that could accomplish what you're seeking, Alexander. A properly constructed partnership agreement, for instance, could ensure that neither party could sell their interest without the other's consent. Alex shook his head stubbornly. Partnerships dissolve, people change their minds, marriage is more permanent. Not always, Nora pointed out gently. And entering a marriage for the wrong reasons often leads to unhappiness for both parties. Alex studied her for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to Adam. And what are your thoughts, cousin? Do you also object to my conditions? Adam met his gaze steadily. I think your intentions are good, Alex. You want to protect Circle E and ensure its continued success. But Nora is right, marriage should be a choice made freely, not a condition imposed from outside. A flicker of something disappointment, perhaps, or resignation crossed Alex's face. I see. And is there no possibility that you two might choose marriage of your own accord? Adam glanced at Nora, his expression softening. That's between Nora and me, he said quietly. But forcing our hands doesn't help matters. Alex leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking more tired than Nora had ever seen him. You care for each other, he observed. It's obvious to anyone with eyes. I thought perhaps I was simply expediting the inevitable. Alex, Nora said gently, Adam and I are exploring our feelings for each other, but we've only known each other for a few weeks. Marriage is a serious commitment, especially out here where divorce is difficult and social support limited. Time, Alex said bitterly. Everyone wants time. It's the one thing I can't give you. The raw pain in his voice made Nora's heart ache. She moved to kneel beside his chair, taking his hand in hers. Your legacy doesn't depend on our marriage, Alex. It depends on the foundation you've built here, the land, the people who work it, the systems you've put in place. Adam and I can carry that forward without wedding rings. Alex looked down at their joined hands, then up at Adam, who had moved to stand beside Nora. You're both so damned reasonable, he said, but there was a hint of wry humor beneath the frustration. Fine. Judge Parker, it seems we need to revise the will. The judge nodded, returning papers to his portfolio. I'll draw up new documents based on whatever arrangement you decide upon. A partnership agreement might be the simplest solution, but we can explore other options as well. For the next hour, they discussed alternatives, weighing the legal and practical implications of different arrangements. Eventually, they settled on a solution that satisfied everyone. Circle E would be left to Adam and Nora as tenants in common, with a detailed agreement specifying how decisions about the ranch would be made and preventing either party from selling their interest, without the other's consent, for a period of 10 years. This should protect Circle E while giving you both the freedom to make your own choices about your personal lives. Judge Parker concluded as he made notes for the revised documents. Alex nodded, looking exhausted but somewhat relieved. Very well. When can you have the new papers ready? I'll return next week with everything prepared for your signature, the judge promised, gathering his things. In the meantime, you should rest, Alexander. You've done good work today. After the judge departed, Alex sank back in his chair, the effort of the meeting clearly having taxed his strength. You should return to bed, Adam said, concern evident in his voice. In a moment, Alex replied. First, I owe you both an apology. I overstepped, trying to manage your lives after I'm gone. You were trying to protect what you love, Nora said softly. We understand that, perhaps. Alex's gaze moved between them, but I should have trusted you to make your own decisions. You're both capable people. Circle E will be in good hands. The best, Adam assured him, squeezing his shoulder. Now, let's get you back to bed before Mrs. Garcia has all our hides for letting you overexert yourself. As they helped Alex back to his bedroom, Nora couldn't help but feel that a burden had been lifted from all their shoulders. The future of Circle E was secure, and whatever developed between her and Adam would do so naturally, without the pressure of Alex's conditions. That evening, after Alex was settled and the day's work complete, Adam invited Nora for a walk in the garden behind the main house. The air was cool but not cold, the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky above them. "You were magnificent today," Adam said as they strolled between rows of Mrs. Garcia's vegetables and herbs. "I've never seen anyone handle Alex so deftly." Nora smiled, pleased by the compliment. "I merely reminded him of what he already knew, that forced marriages rarely end well. Still, it took courage to stand up to him. Alex isn't used to having his plans challenged." Adam reached for her hand, entwining his fingers with hers. "I'm glad you did, though. I want whatever happens between us to be our choice, not his." "As do I." Nora squeezed his hand, enjoying the warmth and strength of it. "Though I admit, I was tempted for a moment by the thought of owning half of Circle E," Adam chuckled. "Only for a moment." "Well, perhaps 2 moments," Nora conceded with a smile. "It's a beautiful ranch." "It is." Adam stopped walking, turning to face her. "But not as beautiful as the woman standing before me." Nora felt her cheeks warm at the direct compliment. "Mr. Embry, I do believe you're flirting with me." "Miss Zimmerman, I do believe I am." Adam's free hand came up to touch her cheek gently. "Does it bother you?" "Not in the slightest," Nora admitted, leaning slightly into his touch. "In fact, I rather enjoy it." Adam's smile widened. "Good. Because I intend to court you properly, Nora Zimmerman, with flowers and candy and moonlit rides across the range." "Flowers might be difficult in the desert," Nora teased. "And I'm not particularly fond of candy, but the moonlit rides sound lovely." "Then moonlit rides it shall be." Adam leaned down, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was both tender and promising. When they parted, he kept her close, his arms encircling her waist. "We have time, Nora. Time to get to know each other, to build something real between us. No pressure, no conditions." "Time," Nora repeated softly, thinking of Alex and his dwindling days. "It's precious, isn't it?" "Yes," Adam agreed soberly. "Which is why we shouldn't waste it." In the weeks that followed, Circle E settled into a new rhythm. Alex had good days and bad, but overall his condition deteriorated steadily. On his better days, he insisted on being involved in ranch decisions, reviewing the books with Nora or discussing cattle matters with Adam. On his worst days, he remained in bed, too weak to do more than listen as they reported the day's activities. Despite his illness, or perhaps because of it, Alex seemed more at peace now that the future of Circle E was secured. He watched with obvious satisfaction as Adam and Nora worked together to run the ranch, their natural complementary skills making them an effective team. As for Adam and Nora, their relationship deepened with each passing day. True to his word, Adam courted her properly with small gifts, shared confidences, and moonlit rides across the range as promised. Nora found herself falling in love with both the man and the land he cherished, her initial trepidation giving way to a growing certainty that her future lay here at Circle E. Winter came to the valley, bringing cooler temperatures and occasional rain that transformed the desert into a subtly different landscape. Christmas approached, and despite Alex's declining health, the ranch prepared to celebrate in traditional style. Mrs. Garcia oversaw the decoration of the main house, with pine boughs and red ribbons adorning the mantels and staircase. Adam and some of the hands ventured into the hills to cut a small pine tree, which they set up in the parlor and trimmed with homemade ornaments and candles. 2 days before Christmas, Adam took Nora on a special ride to a secluded spot on Circle E that he claimed had the best view of the sunset. They sat together on a rocky outcropping, watching as the winter sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "I used to come here as a boy," Adam told her, his arm around her shoulders to ward off the evening chill. "Whenever life became too much, when my father was being particularly demanding, or when I felt lost, this place reminded me that there was beauty in the world worth fighting for." "It's breathtaking," Nora agreed, leaning into his warmth. "Thank you for sharing it with me." Adam shifted slightly, turning to face her more directly. "Nora, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Something in his tone made Nora's heart quicken. "Yes." Adam took both her hands in his expression serious yet tender. "These past months have been the happiest of my life, despite the circumstances with Alex. Getting to know you, working alongside you, watching you fall in love with this land as I did. It's been extraordinary." "For me as well," Nora said softly, her throat tight with emotion. "I know we agreed to take our time, to let our relationship develop naturally without pressure." Adam's thumbs traced gentle circles on the backs of her hands. "But life is unpredictable, as Alex has shown us. Sometimes you have to seize happiness when you find it." With that, he released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. "This was my mother's," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "I'd be honored if you would wear it as my wife." Nora stared at the ring, then at Adam's face, her heart so full she could hardly speak. "Adam, are you certain? This isn't because of Alex or Circle E. This is because I love you, Nora Zimmerman," Adam said firmly. "I love your strength, your intelligence, your courage in facing whatever life throws at you. I love the way you handle the ranch hands with respect but authority. I love watching you ride across the range with your hair coming loose from its pins. I even love the way you argue with me when you think I'm wrong." He smiled, his blue eyes warm with affection. "Circle E is part of our story, yes, but it's not why I'm asking you to marry me. I'm asking because I want to build a life with you, wherever that might be." Tears filled Nora's eyes, happy ones that spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Adam Embry, I will marry you." Adam's face lit with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that sealed their engagement and promised a future filled with love and shared purpose. When they returned to the ranch, they found Alex sitting up in the parlor, wrapped in blankets despite the fire roaring in the hearth. His condition had worsened in recent days, but he insisted on spending time in the common areas of the house rather than remaining isolated in his bedroom. "There you two are," he said as they entered, hand in hand. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd eloped." Adam chuckled, helping Nora out of her coat before removing his own. "Not eloped, cousin, but I do have news that might interest you." Alex's gaze dropped to Nora's left hand where his mother's ring now sparkled in the firelight. A slow smile spread across his bearded face. Well, it seems congratulations are in order." "You don't look surprised," Nora observed, moving to sit beside him on the sofa. "My dear, I've watched you two fall in love for months now. The only surprise is that it took Adam this long to propose." Alex reached out to pat her hand, his grip weaker than it once had been but his eyes bright with genuine happiness. "I'm delighted for you both." "It means a great deal to have your blessing," Adam said, sitting on Alex's other side. "When's the wedding?" Alex asked, an undercurrent of urgency in his voice that they all understood. His time was running short. Adam and Nora exchanged a glance. They hadn't discussed timing yet, but both knew what Alex was really asking. "We were thinking New Year's Day," Nora said, making the decision in that moment. "A new beginning for a new year." "Perfect," Alex said, satisfaction evident in his tone. "That gives Mrs. Garcia just enough time to prepare a proper celebration." The next week passed in a whirlwind of activity. Christmas was celebrated with quiet joy, the ranch hands joining the household for a festive dinner and gift exchange. Adam gifted Nora a beautiful leather-bound journal for her thoughts and ranch observations, while she presented him with a silver pocket watch she'd secretly ordered from Tucson. Alex, despite his weakness, insisted on participating in all the festivities, his evident pleasure in their engagement giving him a temporary boost of energy. He gave them a joint gift, the deed to a small parcel of land adjacent to Circle E, where Adam had once mentioned he might like to build a new house someday. "For your future," Alex said simply as they unwrapped the document. "A place that's truly your own, though I hope you'll remain at the main house for now." "Of course we will," Nora assured him, squeezing his hand. "This is home now." As New Year's Day approached, preparations for the wedding accelerated. Judge Parker would perform the ceremony, and invitations were sent to neighbors and friends throughout the territory. Nora wore her best dress from Boston, freshly altered by Mrs. Garcia to suit the latest fashion. Adam ordered a new suit from Tucson, which arrived just 2 days before the ceremony. On New Year's Eve, as the household prepared for both the year's end and the next day's celebration, Alex called Nora to his room. He had grown noticeably weaker in recent days, spending more time in bed and less engaged with ranch affairs. "You wanted to see me?" Nora asked, entering his room with concern. Alex nodded, gesturing for her to sit beside his bed. "I have something for you," he said, his voice thinner than it had been even a week ago. "A wedding gift that I wanted to give you privately." He reached beneath his pillow and withdrew a small package wrapped in tissue paper. "This belonged to my mother," he explained as Nora carefully unwrapped it. "I always planned to give it to my wife, but since that wasn't to be, I want you to have it." Inside the paper lay a delicate gold locket on a fine chain. When Nora opened it, she found a tiny painted portrait of a beautiful woman with kind eyes and Adam's smile. "It's beautiful," she breathed, deeply touched by the gift. "My father gave it to her on their wedding day," Alex said, watching as Nora examined the locket. "She wore it every day of their marriage until her death." "Alex, I'm honored, but this should go to your future wife," he shook his head, stopping her. "We both know I have no future wife, Nora. But you will be the heart of Circle E, just as my mother was. The locket belongs with you." Tears pricked at Nora's eyes as she leaned forward to embrace him gently. "Thank you. I'll treasure it always." "There's something else," Alex said when she pulled back. "A favor I'd like to ask." "Anything," Nora promised. "After I'm gone, look after Adam." Alex's blue eyes were serious, his voice strengthening with the importance of his request. "He carries guilt too easily for leaving when his father sent him east, for not being here when his sister died, for building his own ranch instead of staying at Circle E. Don't let him blame himself for my death too." Nora nodded solemnly. "I won't, I promise." "Good." Alex seemed to relax slightly. "You're good for him, Nora. You challenge him, make him think. That's what he needs." "He's good for me too," Nora admitted softly. "He's helped me find a home here, a purpose. I never expected that when I arrived in Nogales." "Life rarely gives us what we expect," Alex mused. "Sometimes it gives us something far better." He reached out to pat her hand once more. "Now go. You need your rest before tomorrow. It's not every day a woman gets married." Nora kissed his forehead before leaving, her heart full of conflicting emotions: joy at her impending marriage, sorrow at Alex's declining health, gratitude for the strange twist of fate that had brought her to Circle E. New Year's Day dawned clear and crisp, the winter sun casting long shadows across the ranch yard. The main house buzzed with activity as final preparations were made for the ceremony, which would take place in the parlor at noon. Nora dressed in her room with Mrs. Garcia's assistance, her hands trembling slightly as she fastened Alex's locket around her neck. It nestled just below her collarbone, a tangible connection to the family she was joining and the legacy she was becoming part of. "You look beautiful, señorita," Mrs. Garcia said, adjusting the small wreath of winter berries and greenery that served as Nora's headpiece. "Señor Adam will be speechless." "I doubt that," Nora laughed. "Adam always has something to say." A knock at the door interrupted them. "Nora." Alex's voice, weaker than yesterday but determined. "May I come in?" Mrs. Garcia opened the door to reveal Alex leaning heavily on his crutch, his face pale but his eyes bright with purpose. He had dressed formally for the occasion in a black suit that hung somewhat loosely on his diminished frame. "Alex, you should be conserving your strength," Nora chided gently, moving to help him to a chair, "and miss seeing the bride before she walks down the aisle." "Never." Alex settled into the chair with a grateful sigh. "Mrs. Garcia, could you give us a moment?" The housekeeper nodded, slipping out of the room and closing the door behind her. "You look radiant," Alex said once they were alone. "Adam is a fortunate man." "Thank you." Nora smoothed her skirt nervously. "I hope I can be the wife he deserves." "You already are the partner he needs," Alex assured her. "The rest will come naturally." He paused, gathering strength. "Nora, I wanted to ask. I know it's traditionally the father who gives the bride away, but since yours is gone, would you permit me the honor?" Tears welled in Nora's eyes at the unexpected request. "Oh, Alex, of course. Nothing would make me happier." Relief and joy spread across his features. "Good, I wasn't sure if you'd think it presumptuous." "Not at all." Nora knelt beside his chair, taking his hands in hers. "You've become family to me, Alex, in such a short time but so completely. It's fitting that you should be the one to give me to Adam." Alex squeezed her hands, his grip stronger than she expected. "Then it's settled. Now, I believe we have a wedding to attend." The ceremony itself was simple but meaningful, attended by neighbors, ranch hands, and a few friends from the surrounding area. Judge Parker officiated, his judicial solemnity giving way to genuine warmth as he pronounced Adam and Nora husband and wife. The moment when Alex escorted Nora into the parlor, moving slowly but proudly on his crutch, was one that those present would remember long afterward, not just for the unusual sight of a dying man giving away the bride, but for the obvious love and respect that flowed between all three principals in the drama. Adam's face when he saw Nora approaching on Alex's arm was a study in emotions: love, gratitude, joy, and a touch of protective concern for his cousin's exertion. But when Nora reached his side and Alex placed her hand in Adam's, the three exchanged a look of such perfect understanding that words became unnecessary. "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" Judge Parker asked, following tradition. "I do," Alex replied, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "With a full heart and every blessing." The celebration afterward was joyous but not overly long in deference to Alex's health. He insisted on remaining for the entire affair, watching with evident satisfaction as Adam and Nora received congratulations from their guests and shared their first dance as husband and wife. As the winter sun began to set, casting golden light through the parlor windows, Alex beckoned the newlyweds to his side. "I've never seen Circle E in better hands," he said quietly, pride evident in his voice. "Whatever happens now, I can go in peace." "Don't talk like that," Adam protested. "You still have time." "Perhaps," Alex conceded, "but whether it's days or weeks doesn't matter now. What matters is that I've seen you both happy, seen the ranch secure, known that everything I've worked for will continue." He smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his gaunt face. That's all any man can ask for at the end. 3 days later, Alexander Embry passed peacefully in his sleep, his affairs in order and his legacy secure. The entire territory mourned him, recognizing the loss of a man who had built not just a successful ranch, but a community around it. For Adam and Nora, grief mingled with their newlywed joy, creating a bittersweet beginning to their marriage. They buried Alex on a hillside overlooking the valley, in a spot he had chosen himself, beside his parents and sister. "He was ready," Adam said quietly as they stood hand in hand by the fresh grave after the funeral. "He held on until he knew everything was settled." "Until he saw us happy," Nora agreed, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "He loved you very much, Adam, and Circle E." "And you," Adam added, his arm tightening around her waist. "He told me once that finding you was like discovering a missing piece of the ranch, something he hadn't known was needed until it arrived." Nora smiled through her tears at that, touched by Alex's perception. "We'll make him proud," she promised. "We'll make Circle E everything he dreamed it could be." "And more," Adam agreed, turning her gently in his arms to face the valley spread below them, their valley now, their responsibility and their future. As spring came to Arizona territory, bringing new growth to the desert and new calves to the Circle E herds, Adam and Nora settled fully into their roles as ranch owners and husband and wife. They worked together seamlessly, her business acumen complementing his ranching experience, just as Alex had predicted. They began planning the house they would build on the land Alex had gifted them, though they were in no rush to leave the main house where Mrs. Garcia still maintained order, and where Alex's presence seemed to linger in every corner. One evening in late April, as they sat together on the back porch watching the sunset, Nora turned to Adam with a smile that held both nervousness and joy. "I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hand and placing it gently against her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby." Adam's eyes widened, then filled with such tender happiness that Nora felt her own eyes misting in response. "A baby," he repeated in wonder. "When, doctor?" "Matthews says late November, just before Thanksgiving." Adam pulled her into his arms, his kiss conveying all the emotions that words couldn't express. When they parted, he kept her close, his forehead pressed to hers. "Alex would have been so pleased," he murmured. "He always wanted Circle E to be a family legacy." "It will be," Nora promised, her hand covering his where it rested protectively over their unborn child. "For generations to come." As twilight deepened around them, painting the desert in shades of purple and gold, Nora reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this place and this man. She had arrived in Nogales a desperate woman with nowhere to go, bearing bad news and a returned engagement ring. She told the truth that day: she wasn't the woman Adam had been expecting to meet. And he, with his quiet strength and unexpected depth, hadn't been the man she'd anticipated finding in the wild Arizona territory. Yet somehow, against all odds, they had found in each other exactly what they needed, not what they had ordered or expected, but something far more precious and enduring. Together with the legacy Alex had entrusted to them, they would build a life and a future that honored the past, while embracing all the possibilities that lay ahead. Circle E would continue, a testament to one man's vision and the unexpected love that would carry it forward into a new generation. "I'm not the woman you ordered," Nora whispered, echoing her words from that first meeting. Adam smiled, his eyes reflecting the last golden rays of the setting sun. "And I'm not the man you expected," he replied, completing the exchange that had begun their story. "But somehow we found exactly what we were looking for. A home," Nora said simply, "a purpose, a love worth building a life around." "Yes," Adam agreed, holding her close as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky above Circle E. "All of that and more, much more." And in the gentle Arizona night, with the promise of new life growing between them and the legacy of Circle E secure in their hands, that was more than enough. It was everything.